Today we are up potting our tomato plants, and I'm really excited about this. I did not have good luck with my tomatoes last year. A lot of my seedlings died. I don't know if it was the seeds, if it was the dirt, the potting soil that I started them in. I heard a lot of crazy conspiracy theories about that. And while some of them might have been true, I just decided this year that I was going to go in a totally different direction. So I sourced my dirt from our local greenhouse, and it is this Fafard brand. I don't know if I'm saying it right. I have had extraordinary luck with it this year. It actually smells so much better than the seed stuff or the dirt that you would get in a big box store. I have noticed all of my plants are super healthy. And I actually ordered my tomato seeds this year from Baker's Creek. I have never ordered from them before. This is my first year, and I will tell you, they really delivered. And so I'm super excited about that. So I did 3 different kinds of tomatoes, 2 bigger, like slicing tomatoes, and then I did do a round of cherry tomatoes because my kids will eat cherry tomatoes like grapes. I chose not to do any Romas this year just because we did struggle so much with our Romas from last year. And honestly, the way I make my sauce, I can use slicing tomatoes or cherry tomatoes to make my spaghetti sauce. So I just decided I wasn't even gonna stress about it. I was just gonna go back to what I knew I was really good at and go from there. So these tomato seedlings I started at the end of February, and typically that's actually it's considered pretty late for my zone. Typically I would start them at the end of January. What I have found though is that even though I am listed to be in zone 8, and I think I'm in zone 8B now with the move of zoning, but whatever, we all know that's sort of a guesstimate. But typically what I have found in the past few years is that when I would start my tomato plants or my tomato seeds at the end of January, by this time, mid-April, they would be huge and leggy, and they would really want to be put in the ground. The problem is I have also noticed over the past 10 years, our weather has shifted significantly. We are not really getting colder, freezing temperatures until closer to January, and our spring is now lasting well into May. And so the problem that I was running into is that I was having to put my tomato plants out in the ground, but the night temperatures were really too cold. The days were very gusty. And so my plants were really struggling. Whereas starting these seeds later, I started them like the 25th of February, I think. Starting these seeds later has allowed me to keep them indoors under grow lights longer and really give them time to get strong, get a good root system going, and get better prepared for when I transplant them. Another new trick that I tried this year, I had this as an idea and I didn't know if it was going to work, but I figured it really couldn't fail, was in the past when I have started my tomato seeds, I've always filled up my pot with dirt, put my tomato seeds on top, sprinkled a little dirt on top of them and watered them. And so when the seedlings have emerged, they've always been right on top of the pot, like you see this dirt is filled up now. Well, for those of you who don't know, tomatoes will actually develop roots out of their stems if their stems are buried under dirt. So what I decided to do this year, and I think it had a great result, and I will absolutely be repeating it. So this is kind of like an unknown tip to me. If you already knew this, then you should be sharing it with the world. But I actually started my tomato seeds with my dirt at about halfway up the pot. That way, when the seedlings began to grow, when they got tall enough, I could add more dirt to my pot without having to transplant my seedlings. This gave me a better root system because as the leaves would get taller, I would add more dirt. And then the leaves would get taller and I would add more dirt until I got to the part where this pot was filled up. So it gave me a stronger root system as the plant was going. The other thing it also allowed me to do was to not have to transplant these seedlings until like right now when they are good and established. Yes, tomato plants aren't as funny as like cucumbers or zucchini or squash or whatever. They will tolerate being transplanted, but any plant will do better the less that you manhandle it. And so by starting with a lower dirt level and then adding and adding, I was able to get these tomato plants this tall, like nice and big, before they finally have run out of space and I need to separate them. So I've given less trauma to the plant because I haven't had to rip these apart and mess with the root system or anything like that. We're gonna do that today, but this is the first time these plants have had to have been disturbed as far as like having things separated or taken apart. So I'm gonna move the camera. The first thing we're gonna do is get this out. I'm gonna get these separated and then I'm gonna show you how I am working with this transplanting. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do, of course, is take them out. And you can see that they have a really nice web of roots. These were not root bound yet, so that's awesome, but they have been in this dirt. And by moving them around and transplanting them into new dirt, I'm just refreshing their nutrients and not having to like get into fertilizers and stuff like that. So one downside, of course, of planting multiple seeds together is that when it is time to transplant them, they're usually, you know, all end up really close like this. So I'm just going to carefully kind of start working things apart. I don't like rip stuff apart. I really try to kind of wiggle it and almost like a tangle of hair, okay? So I was able to get this one apart. He's a nice, good, strong looking tomato plant. He's healthy. Now, since he's taller, I am going to use a taller pot to transplant him in because I don't want to put him back in this short pot. I could if I didn't have another size, but I want to bury as much of his stem as possible because I want him to continue to grow a strong root system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some dirt, just a little bit of dirt in the bottom of this pot. I don't think you can see with the camera. I have this pot filled up with about that much dirt. Just enough to rest this root ball in, okay? And so you can see how far up he is going to go. So I'm actually gonna take off these bottom two leaves. Sorry, I'm trying to do all this one-handed. And then I am going to fill this pot up all the way to the top with dirt because I want everything from here down to the root ball to start growing roots. So let me do that really fast. Okay, and so now he's done. He looks like a tiny little tomato plant now, but I know all of this is now going to become an entire root system. So I'm going to continue to do that with the rest of these plants. The one thing you will notice is that, so in this trio that's left here, I have one tiny plant. Because he is so small, if I cannot safely separate him from one of these larger plants, I will actually just go ahead and keep him with them. But I am actually really going to try to separate him. And actually, I'll show you right now. He seems like he is going to come easily, okay? So this one, because he's so small, I'm going to go ahead and put him back in this pot and get him buried deeper. He's fine to go back in a smaller pot because he is a smaller plant. And then once he gets to, you know, this size or bigger, I can transplant him in a bigger pot if I need to. year that I run out of bigger pots. And while you can see, I make use of pretty much anything that we have that could be considered a container, because I just think it's such a waste to buy plastic pots when you can, really recycle quite a few things. At some point, I do tend to run out. And so what I will probably end up doing, especially in some of these wider containers, is I will plant 2 tomatoes to a pot. Now, I am going to go ahead and separate them and put them kind of on opposite sides of the pot so that they can not continue to grow together. But it's just sort of what it is that sometimes I just have to double up. And this tray of tomatoes that I have to do is one of 3 trays. So we have a lot of tomatoes this year, which I'm really excited about. But especially since I have a smaller one and then kind of a medium-sized one, this will work. Eventually, when it comes time to plant these in the ground, I will probably plant these first because they will need to get out quicker than, say, a single tomato planted in a pot. But if you're in a pickle, this will work just fine. Okay, so it is all finished. All of the tomato seedlings have been repotted either completely by themselves or sometimes they might have a friend with them. Like I said, I usually run out of pots, but I have everything sorted by the type of tomato, and depending if they were smaller, I could put them closer to a grow light. If they were larger, this is kind of what our setup has been, and it's actually worked out really good because by flanking this table on either side with these 2 shelves, it's given me more of just like everybody gets light from all angles. And it also has allowed me to control the height of the lights. As seedlings are starting, you want them to be closer to your lights, and then as they get taller, of course, you want to move the lights away, otherwise the leaves get scalded. So we are going to, well, I got everything watered, so we are going to leave this for today. I do have to repot these zinnias tomorrow. They're struggling a little bit. But I'll get to those tomorrow, and hopefully everything will just keep growing. We'll see you guys later.